One of the most common questions that I get when it comes to the squat is why can't I do it, and how do you go about kind of getting your proper first squat ATG with a flat back? So automatically you guys know where I stand on this. You know that I'm thinking about the posterior chain when it comes to the squat. You need long hamstrings, long glutes, long adductors in order for you to get into that position. And you also know that I've said this in a few videos, that I believe the hip flexors have a massive role in the squat. So on one hand, I've got a recommendation for you guys to stretch the posterior chain, and I've got one recommendation to strengthen the psoas, iliopsoas, iliacus, rectus femoris, all that stuff. But usually people are like, well, don't give me a whole freaking PhD report on it. Just tell me what to do. Give me an exercise so I can get into the squat. And so that kind of got me thinking about, do I tell people to stretch or strengthen first? So most people, that are kind of walking the planet without knowing anything about a barbell or the gym or anything, what do? Well, we know exactly what 21st century man does in the first world country. We do a lot of sitting in various different things, toilet, couch, car, work, all that. So the majority of the hours of the day, we do a lot of sitting, right? That's the majority activity that we do in the day. So do I tell people to stretch or do I tell people to strengthen? That kind of crossed my mind, and I thought to myself, okay, I think I've come up with a solution. The solution is to strengthen every single time. There is no point stretching something because that tightness is coming from something, some sort of weakness, right? You guys know that I also believe that a tight muscle is a weak muscle. So a few different things happening here. I think most importantly to me is this realization of anterior pelvic tilt. Now, I think most people that are doing a lot of sitting have some sort of degree of anterior pelvic tilt. I could be wrong. I'm sure there's people out there with posterior pelvic tilt, but I find that people with posterior pelvic tilt have a greater affinity to squatting than people with anterior. If you have anterior pelvic tilt, I think you're just fighting an uphill battle. So the number one thing I think people should do, day one, exercise one, just before you even get into squatting, is do some sort of hip flexor training, whether it be sit-ups, whether it be standing single knee raises, whether it be hanging bilateral knee raises. Now, hanging is probably for most people too hard. And if when you're hanging, you're most likely going to be in that anterior pelvic tilt when you're hanging. So I don't want you to hurt your back by hanging leg raise. I probably prefer you to start off with a standing single knee raise. I think the hanging portion adds too much of a complexity. So there you go. What I told this person was, I don't want you to do any sort of squats for the first month at all. Because you clearly just, when you sit down into the hole, you round your back, you have a massive out wink, and then you kind of roll backwards onto the ground, like you fall over. The reason why people fall over, in my experience, is because their hip flexors, the psoas, is so jacked up that it's got no idea how to fire, and it's got no idea how to stabilize the lumbar spine. And then that kind of sends a whole bunch of different kind of reciprocal, how should I say, kind of making up mechanisms, I can't think of the word, compensations, that's the word. So it starts with the psoas, and then there's a whole bunch of compensations, ends up with a hamstring that's long, but also very, very tight, and unable to kind of stretch into a position at the end of the motion. And also the adductors are jacked, everything's jacked. So in order for us to get good at squatting, we need to be good at reversing that sitting position, meaning we need to get better at hip flexion. This is the key word. So a few keywords. You need stronger hip flexors to enable you to have better active hip flexion, and then you will have better passive hip flexion when you go into a squat. Anyway, a whole bunch of words here, but that's what I would say to you. Knee raises start off with before you even thinking about squatting, if you can't even get to a parallel properly or beyond. All right, guys, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.